Has the offseason got you down? Are you needing your hockey fix? Well, how about a complete look at everything worth another look from this past NHL season? We had an incredible year for the NHL and hockey as a whole. We finally got international best on best, which, fueled by political drama, gave us maybe the greatest opening 9 seconds of hockey ever. We had not one, but two long-standing Wayne Gretzky records broken this season as Alexander Ovechkin officially became the greatest goal scorer of all time. New stars emerged this season, full-on chaos erupted numerous times. There were several amazing moments alone worth taking another look at. Obviously, I built up a bit of a collection of my favorite photos we'll recap, and all of this is just touching the tip of the iceberg, so how about we get to a full recap of the 2024-2025 season. Now, while we had numerous incredible moments, I have to pay tribute to Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau. In the offseason leading up to this season, the hockey world was shaken to its core when these two brothers tragically lost their lives. And so early into the season, it was pretty special when we saw Cole Caulfield rocking number 13 in honor of Johnny, scoring, and the passion was visible. He sent one off to Johnny as you can't make it up. Scored his 13th point playing Toronto for the 13th time, all while wearing the number 13. And we saw Johnny tributes throughout the year. In Columbus, that donkey hat, we saw the number 13 painted at both ends of the ice, helmet stickers. Johnny's dad joined numerous teams during team practices throughout the season, but nothing was quite like the home opener in Columbus, which was especially incredible. As you may remember, to start that game, the Jackets had just 4 skaters leaving the wing for Johnny, but it was all capped off with his longtime friend Sean Monahan scoring a goal and immediately pointing up at the banner. Just an amazing moment. But all right, let's get to opening week, where we had a few interesting moments right out of the gate. We saw Mr. Steal Your Girl, Kirby Doc. That was pretty good, but maybe my favorite was when Brady mocked Hutson's constant head fakes. Then, after we saw the Coyotes' run in Arizona come to an end last season, it of course gave birth to an entirely new franchise in Utah, and while a new name had yet to be determined at this time, the Utah Hockey Club came out swinging, and so did their fans. $120,000 in beer sales on opening night, which, as you can imagine, got a little saucy. A new season also meant some new blood came into the game. We saw Michkov for the Flyers, who went for the between the legs in game 1, the Stones to do that. For San Jose, we saw Celebrini scoring his first goal in the big league, which was an interesting one, and in Montreal's home opener, Sam Montembeault stopping 47 shots set a new NHL record as the man was absolutely dialed early. Now, coming into this season, Marc-Andre Fleury also announced that it would be his last, so it was good to see him out auditioning for a new job early on. And lastly, it also marked the final year for Sam Rosen, longtime Rangers announcer, who was acknowledged by Wes McCauley in Game 1 at MSG, which was a classy move. But moving on to Week 2, as things got rolling, we saw a beer league game in Ottawa, 14 goals capped off with an OT winner by Norris. That was absolute insanity. As that week, even the goalies got in on it. The Gus Bus, with Minnesota's first ever goalie goal in franchise history, was certainly a highlight to remember. And while we saw the Zoomies hit Brady back in Week 1, during Week 2, it was Decord, fired up after a win, jumping into the pile and missing it entirely.
I caught the Zoomies. I was excited.
Now, the hits were flying early in the season as well. We had some massive ones in the opening couple of weeks, and looking back, this is kind of fun to see now as the Rats were also flying in Boston, and yes, I am talking about Marchand as he flew in to protect Pasta from what would be his future teammate. And in Florida, after Bluger and Balinskis would go at it, this was pretty good as well, a conveyor belt of returning laundry. Tempers were so high early this season, even teammates were going at it in practice. You remember this leaked footage that came out of Buffalo when Dahlin and Krebs went at it? I guess it was a glimpse into what their season would be, as we also got an early glimpse of what the season would be for the Predators, who started the year off with an 0-5 record. Meanwhile, Winnipeg, opposite end of the spectrum, were 5-0 to start. A strange sequence that came from Week 2 came in Colorado, where a puck clearly went out of play here. The official even saw it, but for whatever reason, play continued, and for whatever reason, Gerard Bedard decided to give the puck straight to the Ducks, who inevitably would come back and score immediately. Even worse, it was in the final minute of play. And lastly, for week 2, it didn't take long for the milestones to hit as Crosby got his 1600th point while Malkin netted his 500th goal in the same game. As we move on, by week 3, Anderson's infamous stare down was in full effect. He had done it in Vancouver, Edmonton, did it again in Pittsburgh, and of course in Winnipeg. You already knew it was coming when he scored. But speaking of the Jets, they would improve this week to 8-0, while the San Jose Sharks, well, yeah, they became the first team in NHL history to lose the first 9 games of a season in back-to-back seasons. We again had a few odd sequences in week 3. First, another in Colorado. After Forsberg's blade came off, he required a fix, but taking too long, Ullmark had to tag in. He would come in, made a single save before Forsberg was back in net. And while Ullmark admired his one save, he wasn't quite done yet. The next whistle, and he was tapped again. As the revolving door of goalies went back and forth, in the span of just a couple of minutes, we saw 4 goalie changes for Ottawa. Meanwhile, in Montreal, well, they learned why you play to the whistle. The Rangers sent one down here, no whistle blowing, the defenders led up and would watch the puck go straight into their net as the Rangers scored. Now, of course, there were more massive hits, but I think the biggest this week came from the Trouba train, who absolutely laid out Justin Barron. Over in Detroit, Wings were up a goal at this point with Rasmussen looking to cap it off. He did just that, but in the process, body Jack Hughes, who apparently missed the road sign, ran into a moose that would stare him down, whip the twig back, and scream in his face. As we headed over to our first full month, you could tell it was early in the season because of things like this. Here, Rossi winning a race against Lilleberg, and what the hell? He finds something extra behind the net, and we suddenly had 2 pucks on the ice at the same time. You see, earlier in the game, a puck went into the netting, it fell back out, and no one ever noticed. Then here, we saw Ekman Larsson get called for a cross-check. However, he didn't go to the box, he went to the bench and tried to play it cool. If you don't see them, they don't see you. But after a lengthy delay involving Reeves trying to go for him instead, we want him. Oh, me? Alright, as he finally would give in. A notable from this week, well, it was Flowers' final game in Pittsburgh, where he made a fantastic save late in the game that strangely resembled the cup-winning save of 2009. So that was just kind of cool to see. But even better were the chirps. On the topic of the Penguins' Halloween night against the Ducks, we saw Sid put on a show, capping it off in OT with a beauty, as he was all tricks, no treats. But speaking of goats, with Ovi scoring 5 goals in week number 4, this was around the time talks of him breaking the Gretzky record really started to heat up, as he now found himself just 35 away. Could it happen? Well, the scoring continued into week 5. There was another 3 with 10 goals in 14 games. And on the topic of goals, one of the most insane I've ever seen came in Colorado. After this Kraken shot missed the net, sent the puck curling all the way around back to the Seattle end, where the Avs recovered it, held possession for 40 seconds, and eventually scored. Or did they? The Kraken would challenge for what appeared to be an obvious offside entry. The goal was waved off subsequently, but they took another look, realized it was indeed shot by the Kraken, and therefore this was not offside, meaning the goal counted. Over in Winnipeg, you remember these ruthless chants they had? Around this time was also when Jalen Chatfield had his pregame routine not exactly go to plan, and this was also cool. In San Jose, the youngest NHL player in Celebrini scored on the oldest in Fleury. He would eventually get his second of the night with the no-look bar-down shorty, at which point it became pretty evident this kid was special. Also special from this week was a remarkable save from Binner, somehow able to keep this one out. Over in Anaheim, after a post-game scrum broke out, it went on so long, the arena crew cut the lights. And lastly, this season, we of course saw the trend of dumb questions. So how about a bit of a montage of some of those?
That is a really dumb question. Yes.
What if you have a mosquito bite under your equipment?
I can't play anymore. It's too much.
When you look up at a replay of yourself in the Jumbotron, do you ever go, damn, that was a good play? I think everyone has done that before.
I'm always afraid that they're gonna have like a heat camera or something, and you make a fart or something in the crease and it's gonna show all over.
Do you ever get nervous that you're going to fall?
I get nervous I'm going to fall every time I step on the ice, especially when they do the opening night roster. I am most nervous I am all year for opening night roster skate out, and I'm really nervous I'm going to fall when I skate to the bench for a penalty killer. Yes, because I don't want their team to laugh at me when I have to fall in front of their bench.
No.
You know?
No, I think it bends my hair too much.
Once in a while. Just to keep it in good state.
I like shampoo.
Yeah, shampoo's good.
It's true. It's true.
I think goalies are probably a little weird, but I think everybody's weird.
By week 5, the Winnipeg Jets were also already making history. With 14 wins in 15 games, they broke the NHL record for the best start to a season ever. Ehlers also became the only Dane with 200 goals, as he became the highest scoring Danish player of all time. And yeah, the Jets undoubtedly had the best start to this season. But by week number 6, as we were already at the 20-game mark, things were beginning to settle in, and the Boston Bruins, on the opposite end of the spectrum, certainly weren't playing up to last year's season. So after an 8-9 start to the season, this is where they fired Jim Montgomery. But on this topic, no start was more underwhelming than that of the Predators. After spending over $108 million in the offseason, they were off to a 6-11-3 start through 20, which was good for dead last. Yikes. This was the week where Reeves finished a hit on Carlson and suddenly became Super Revo, using a parachute to work on his skating. We saw Trocheck flipping the bird from the bench, and the young guns Michkov and Celebrini started going at it in Philly, which Macklin, if you remember, also stopped that likely goalie goal on Igor in MSG this week, to which he responded, "The kid should be in school." Dustin Wolf at this stage of the season began to emerge as an early Calder candidate, giving the Flames some great goaltending, and then there was Bedard in Chi-Town with a rough start to the season. Not exactly the sophomore year he wanted early on, and this week was another with milestones. Vasilevsky, with his 300th victory, became the fastest in league history to 300, while in Edmonton, McJesus recorded his 1,000th point, becoming the 4th fastest to do that, and the Jets now got to 15 wins in 16 games. Lastly, with a hat-trick in Vegas, the 31st of his career, it meant Ovechkin was officially now under 30 goals from the record. But after scoring 15 in 18 games, that train was suddenly abruptly derailed when he suffered a broken leg that had the league in shambles. Why? Week 7 was also when we saw that interesting one in Seattle after Jessica Campbell noticed the Preds starting lineup read number 9 rather than 91. It made for a sequence you don't see every day. It was also the week this now infamous soundbite was born.
Check, for check, and paycheck.
As for some more milestones around this time, Jumbo Joe had his sweater lifted to the rafters, and Crosby netted his 600th goal, which was cool to see, but more than anything, it was an interesting week for the netminders. You may remember Travis Boyd made his Minnesota Wild debut that week and got caught in a snowstorm, meaning he was forced to walk to the arena. And despite Reimer submitting his save of the year candidate on Celebrini, this week Marc-Andre Fleury in Edmonton let in one of the strangest goals of the year. Just 15 seconds in, Draisaitl's pass went along the boards, hopped over Middleton's stick, and took a bad bounce going in between the 5-hole. Brutal. But if week 7 was strange, week 8 turned it up. That was the one where Charlie Lindgren scored on himself.
Ouch, Charlie!
And he put it dead center too, meaning with Ovi out, he was suddenly in his rear view.
This guy first NHL talk tonight.
Joey Decord was just straight up bullied by Sharky, and so the goalies had seen enough. Quick was eager to get in on it. Elvis, with a few too many shots, had him hot as he went after Uyghur, needing to be held back. Blues Rangers was another spicy one. Cooley, just being a jerk to Hofer, nearly set things off between the goalies, as this was notably a physical week in the National. Carlson on the receiving end of a huge hit here in Montreal. Gallagher, that's 2 for flinching. And of course, who could forget the Biz V6 fiasco from that week, which again, this is real footage of what went down. I know, crazy. Now by week 9, we were 25% of the way into the season and things were getting real. But it was also the week we got maybe the worst take of the year. Steve Valiquette called out Jack Hughes, who on a breakaway tried to score, and while it looks like hockey, he wasn't impressed, calling it Instagram hockey.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what that means. Like, what does that even mean?
This was also the week we learned more precisely why Buffalo has not been good.
We don't have palm trees. We have taxes in New York. Those are real.
At this time, the Blackhawks were bottom of the league, and Michkov in Philly was lighting it up. He was on a 4-game point streak and became the first rookie to 10 goals in the season, as well as the first to 25 points. He also got his first ejection from a game that week before he signed an autograph on the way out. You gotta love it. I also loved that insane shot of Wilson we got that week. He caught one up high in Montreal, so he was icing it on the bench, but he came back to not just score one, but another for the game winner. Giggity, giggity. And lastly, having lost 6 of 7, the big news this week was the Trouba trade from the Rangers. He was traded to Anaheim where he would unite with Gudas, and that was terrifying. In week number 10, it was the Avs now making moves, adding to their wood pile as they already had Miles Wood, but they brought in Wedgwood and then added Blackwood. That is a whole lot of wood. And this was a whole lot of steam between the benches. Do you remember this? Don't talk to the players. Sack was like, who? Me? Don't talk to the players. Are you talking to me? Or the player? Well, I just saw you. Don't talk to the players. Who? Him. Don't talk to the player. And so while not feeling too festive, the holidays were in full effect, and nothing said that more than the Sharks dropping this banger.
We are Team Teal coming out of the West, where the holiday decorations are the best.
But check out the making of it.
Collect them all, buy as many as you can. I'm saving money for a giant snowman. Snowman.
Another gift we got this week, the Four Nations secret players were revealed.
You guessed it, it's me, Connor McDavid.
I am Nathan McKinnon of the Colorado Avalanche.
It's me, it's Austin.
So sassy.
It's me, it's Austin.
And again, the Rangers were struggling hard around this time, and so with the Blackhawks beating them, Anders Sorensen got his first victory and became the first Swedish head coach with a victory in the NHL. And lastly, this was also when we saw Ned on the bench catch one, as damn, what a shiner that was. The following week, though, we saw more where that came from, as hockey players are just different. Hyman in Edmonton caught a Booch bomb up high. He was leaking heavily, and yet he was out there and he was scoring a lot. He had goals in 6 straight games.
Feels okay. Broken nose. Feel good?
Well, bud, you don't look good. Taking a trip south to Calgary, it was Brady Tkachuk who caught a rogue stick as he was leaking, but surprise, surprise, he was out there to start the next frame, and of course he would. He went on to score the OT winner. Missing teeth and hockey players. You name me a better combo. As we head back to Buffalo, this was when they were on that 13-game losing skid, and nothing summed that up more than this sequence. You remember this? Even when they scored, they didn't. They had a goal called back due to a missed penalty that happened prior to scoring, which was truly odd.
I'd rather be in this position than Buffalo, so you know what? It's not that bad.
Also odd was the drama coming out of Vancouver this season.
I don't know why people still try and make up.
I don't care. You guys want to talk about it? You want to ask me all you want.
It hasn't been distracting you.
Oh my God. Next question.
I can bring up PD and we can do the interview together if that would make you guys happy.
This team get where it needs to go.
Where do we want to go?
So beyond an NHL season, the keeping up with the Canucks season was also in full swing. Week 11, we saw Matt Rempe lay a nasty hit on Heiskanen in Dallas, which landed him another suspension and meant that in 22 games played, he had 4 ejections, more than he had points with 11 games suspended. Impressive stuff. Tell you who wasn't impressed with the officiating this week, old Torts. After ref Michael Markovic clearly put his arm up here, Konechny came out as as the extra men, but Markovic then put his arm down, which now meant we had too many men on the ice. However, nothing got called. And so after the Red Wings got possession and nothing was whistled down, there it is. Suddenly, it was now the Flyers with a penalty, and Torts was pissed. You put your fucking hand up. Yes, you did. Hathaway is like, is this even real life right now? This week was also when Patrick Laine scored his 8th power play goal in what came in 9 games. We saw Fleury do his best reverse Sean Avery, and Charlie Lindgren making a cartwheel, windmill, whatever it was, save had himself a beauty, even if he was throwing up between periods. But with that, let's move forward to week 12, where now into the final week of 2024 already. This was when the Red Wings lost 4-0 to the Blues, and yeah, they needed a break.
We need the break. The break's coming at a really good time.
Yzerman agreed, and Lalonde's break was extended. He got canned. Maybe my favorite moment this week, though, came in New Jersey, where the Devils laid a pounding on the Rangers, who were just in shambles by this time, and were then trolled on the Jumbotron with the 2019 draft clip of Rangers fans cheering that they didn't pick Hughes. And Hughes was caught smirking.
What a smile to your face.
I don't know, man. I don't think it. No.
McKinnon at this point was the first to 60 points, and also around this time of the season, it's typical we start to see a lot of the nasty really pick up, and sure enough, we did. But we also got ourselves a Buddy the Elf sighting in LA. He's looking a little rougher than I remembered, but you may remember this as well. In Toronto, Steven Lorentz during warm-ups had his bucket get stuck in the glass. Certainly one of the more hilarious moments of the year. He couldn't get it off without Domi cutting it off. And the big story that week was the return of the Russian machine. He was finally back after 40 days, and he got going with a pair of goals in both opening games, getting now to just 25 from the record as the Caps were off to their best start in 9 years. All the while, he had 19 goals in 23 games played, good for his best start to a season ever. Week 13 came with the dawn of a new year, and it meant we had the annual Winter Classic, where the Blues simply dominated Chicago 6-2, meaning the Hawks have lost 5 straight Winter Classics in a row. And then, you remember this? Down a goal, down a man with 42 seconds on the clock, Roy pulled his goalie. Yeah, that went as you'd expect. What also went how you would expect was Cutter Gauthier's return to Philly with the FU Cutter chance. And of course, Jamie Drysdale on the other end of it would score, which led to the Jamie's better chance. That building was rocking. Torts was parting the seas, and Konechny, I will fight you. In that week 14, we also saw these two gray-haired goats hit some major milestones. Ovi got to goal number 20, marking the 20th consecutive season he had done so, while Sid, with this face-off, passed Patrice Bergeron to become the all-time leader in that department. He also picked up an apple on this goal in the very next game, as he would move into 9th all-time in points. As for the goalies, Markstrom for the Devils had himself a pair of Save of the Year candidates. He was on fire. We also saw Fleury in Vegas for what was his final appearance there, but the big story was Connor Hellebuck. He became the 3rd fastest netminder to 300 wins, got to 500 games played, and he recorded his 6th shutout of the season, meaning he had as many donuts at this point as he had losses. Remarkable stuff. And so was this. Only in hockey would you have 2 guys going at it in a scrap just for one to thank the other for the fight. Now, with that said, it wasn't all love out there. Another one of my favorite moments this season came in Tampa when Aho was mocking Hagel. That was pretty good, but Pinto taking a tumble in practice was also pretty good.
And I thought it was a puck under my foot, so I thought I just whipped it, and then I took a tumble. That was a good one.
By week 15, we had now entered the second half of the season, and you could feel it. Things were getting heated.
And we're the 3 best friends that anybody could have.
Out of this scrum, we got what was maybe one of my favorite photos of the year, but we also saw the best player in the world, Connor McDavid, get suspended week 15 after he and Garland had that wrestling match, you may remember. But by this point, there were a few teams at this time seemingly starting to figure it out. The Red Wings, despite starting the year 13-17-4, completely turned things around, and they suddenly were on a 7-game winning streak, their best in 13 years, as they were right back in the playoff mix. Another standout at this time were the second youngest team in the league, the Montreal Canadiens. Led by Cole Caulfield, who led the league at 5-on-5 goals at the time, Lane Hutson's fantastic start to his rookie season helped, and Jakob Dobish, who remained red hot, meant they were off to a 5-game winning streak themselves. They also contributed to a fantastic original 6 matchup against the Leafs during that week, as they got up 3-0 on them in the first when Reeves wanted a piece of Jack-Eye, who said, "Look at the score, bud. Get that out of here." Well, the Leafs would come back with not just 2, 3, or 4, even 5 goals, as we went from this to this real quick. Ovi over in Ottawa scored yet another that week. He was now just 21 away. He also caught himself another victim in Marilainen, as he officially passed Yager for the most tendies ever scored on. Getting back to the goalies, Nedeljkovic, who was on that list by the way, made some history of his own this week after he recorded an assist on this goal and then on an empty net scored a goal of his own that night, and Ned became the first netminder in NHL history with both a goal and an assist in the same game.
Fight away from a Gordie Howe.
This week we saw Bedard become the youngest player to 100 points since Crosby, and in Buffalo, this was NHL history, folks. Burns chopping down McLeod on the breakaway meant rather than a penalty shot, it was a freebie, and it just so happened to be the third of the night for him. So beyond just being a hattie, the craziest part is the Sabres recorded no shots on net this period, meaning this was the first time in history a team had scored a goal without getting a shot on net for that same period. From there, we went into week 16, which was a wild one. Bags were in the air, nachos were on the ice, which by the way, what a crazy moment this was. Corey Perry scoring while someone's down payment for a house laid on the ice? Yeah, Thompson was pissed. But the goalies gave us some absolutely ridiculous saves this week as well. Ottinger with a save of the year candidate of his own, but my favorite no doubt came from Charlie Lindgren in Vancouver. He made that ridiculous baseball style save, and you better believe that was another for the collection. But we also got some feistiness from him as well. Igor going after Tkachuk at MSG, Kochekov was out there laying hits, and Fleury in Minnesota was taking a left to the mask. But this was also the week you may remember suddenly seeing Matthews playing with a goalie stick. Well, that came when Elvis lost his and decided to rip Matthews away from him. He was like, "All right, I guess I'll take yours then," and while he dropped it, they both got called.
Decided to play with his for a second, so gotta read the bullpen, I guess.
It was also the week we saw a second E. Pettersson debut in Vancouver, which here is live footage of JT Miller at the time.
I'd like you to meet my cousin Stanley.
There's 2 of them!
And it was the week we had a Boston Strangler sighting. Brad Marchand choked Nick Cousins out that week, which was a wild scene. And so was seeing Joseph Woll singing.
Yeah, it was something, yeah. I don't know. I could only watch it once, so.
We didn't know we were going to be up there the whole song, so that was maybe the most nerve-wracking. I got to make sure I'm like jumping around and looking pumped on the stage.
Maybe the biggest news in week 16, though, started with the news of the Canes trading Taylor Hall, which then quickly escalated to Rantanen also being involved, which all kind of came out of nowhere, leaving the hockey world speechless. But as we begin to enter the third period of the season, so to speak, the chaos was just beginning. Week 17 saw some of the biggest hits of the season, as well as Hartman's DDT that Timmy Stützle was on the receiving end of in Ottawa. That was a greasy one, landed him a 10-game sussy, but it was also the week that, in my opinion, we got the funniest sequence of the season in Calgary. You may remember Klapka caught Wilson in the corner, gave him a little extra, which the Flames figured was a bit of a dive. They were barking at him, but a little while later, Wilson, coming together with Anderson, was immediately mimicked and mocked by Anderson, which continued into the box. Now, flashing back to those Anderson stare-downs from earlier in the season, Wilson used it to mock Anderson, which he came right back with more of his own, and this was just amazing. Ooh, nice head. Guys, who am I? This week, the drama in Vancouver finally came to a head as we saw JT Miller moved. He was sent to the Rangers just in time to avoid yet another Pettersson. Yes, the Canucks added a third. Week 17 also marked the final game in Montreal for the Flower as his farewell tour continued, and they showed him all the love while he gave them a vintage Fleury show. There were some great moments that game. He also recorded a shutout and thereby became the first in NHL history to record one both as a teenager and at 40 years or older. We saw Ovi continuing to score at a torrid pace. He was now sitting just 18th from the record, and the realization of what was coming was beginning to get very real with 30 games still remaining. But also real were the losers of the season. Boston took a beating this week, 7-2 from the Sabres, while Torts and Michkov were seen going at it on the bench in Philly. And speaking of the rookies, how about Dustin Wolf? He continued a fantastic rookie campaign that week. Dave Riddick in Tampa submitted his save of the year candidate, robbing point for a beauty that week. Meanwhile, Jonathan Quick picked up his 400th victory, becoming the firstborn goalie to 400 wins. The following week, it was Patrick Kane getting in on the history, scoring maybe the filthiest shootout goal we saw all season as he took the #1 spot for the most shootout goals ever from his longtime teammate Jonathan Toews. That week, we saw a bat in the building in Chicago, which was wild, could only be caught with a net, and in Buffalo, Kent Johnson gave us his goal of the year candidate with an absolute nasty spinorama. That week, we also saw Bedard get called out by Biz on national TV for playing, quote, pond hockey, which became a popular narrative.
I don't need to watch a TNT broadcast to figure out if I made a mistake.
As it was a tough week for the kid. Coming off what was an impressive rookie campaign, all the negativity came together this week and seemingly put a chip on his shoulder as he responded to that comment with a pretty one. Not bad for pond hockey, but the big deal this week was the Four Nations break. Despite Quinn Hughes officially being ruled out, he was being held together with duct tape at this point, and all of Canada holding its breath after Sidney Crosby left after an awkward collision with Holla that saw him miss a couple games, had people freaking out. He did end up being good to go, and so what unfolded that week was maybe the greatest highlight of the year, at least for me. We hadn't seen best on best hockey in years. Add to it the political environment with tariffs, the booing of the national anthem leading up to this. Safe to say tensions were high.
I didn't like it, and that's all I got.
And sure enough, we saw some of the greatest hockey in a quarter century. The Tkachuk Bash brothers were a big storyline, of course. The Finnish-Swedish rivalry was a lot of fun to watch as well, as the Finns basically showed up, knocked out Sweden, and called it a tourney. But the opening 9 seconds of Canada-US Game 1 was absolutely electric. It really started before puck drop, but Hagel and Matthew Tkachuk were up first. Then we had another bout at the very next puck drop between Brady and Bennett as the Bash bros were dapping each other up.
I got him good. That was mine good. Unbelievable.
Before a third scrap, Miller with Parayko, where Miller nearly KO'd himself. There were just so many highlights from what was just an unreal tournament. And as a whole, while there were huge hits all over the place, the physicality was on another level in what was the purest, most charged up, passionate hockey I can remember in years. Maybe the hit with the most impact came from Crosby playing Finland. You may remember Canada nearly blew a 4-goal lead that game before Captain Sid to the rescue with a big hit at center ice, got the puck back, and finished it off, setting up a USA rematch. While I have to mention undoubtedly the best goalie performance this tournament came from Hellebuck, who all tournament was just leaps and bounds ahead of the rest. But after all roads led to a US-Canada rematch for gold.
I did it for the flag, not for the cameras.
Our team does not care about anything that they say.
We want them again.
Probably the most jacked up I've been.
We again had so many storylines. Again, the politics, the rise of U.S. hockey, Canada fighting to hold on to its reign, all meant this tournament was capped off with a thriller of a championship game. And speaking of storylines, a big one that emerged was Jordan Binnington. He was thrown under the bus throughout the tournament, but putting on a performance of a lifetime, he was sensational in overtime. And so finally, Marner finding McDavid wide open eventually produced the McGoal golden goal. Connor McDavid taking the baton from 8-7 gave Canada gold, but truly more than anything, I felt the fans were the winners. This was an incredible win for the NHL. 10.1 million viewers for Game 1, 16.1 for Game 2, as that was the second most watched game in over a decade, and so for fans and hockey as a whole, a huge success. You may also remember the following week when we saw McDavid's hometown McDonald's and another in Edmonton renamed to McDavid's temporarily. That was pretty cool. But with the break coming to an end, all that built-up tension brought regular season roaring back. And so did the Great Chase. Alex claimed yet another victim that week, adding to the long list, but scoring not just his second of the night, but a third for the Hattie from long range on goal 882. The man and the Caps now had 15 goals in 2 games. Nutty stuff. On the other end of that were again the Predators, who found themselves still right down near the bottom, and having lost 8 of their last 10, marking the 8th time in those 10 games that they scored 2 or less goals. Stammer not having a single point during that stretch. It was a tough season all year for the Preds. You may remember this as well. This was the week we saw Razor take one to the Dome in Buffalo.
Get in the head again? Can we swap out those pucks? Now I might be dented.
And sure enough, he was as far away from the action as possible the following game. Didn't stop him from going to town on some grub though. You may also remember this, when an entire nationwide arena sang Little Johnny happy birthday. And in that same game, Elvis displayed his vertical ability, which was another wild goalie moment. But near the end of that game, going into the post awkward, this was hilarious.
Everything okay?
I got the post in my butt and that was it didn't felt good. I'll tell you that. I literally felt the post between my cheeks, so it didn't felt good.
On the topic of the Jackets, Week 21 brought the Stadium Series between them and Detroit, a game that had major playoff indications where 95,000 people got to witness that game end on a controversial game-winning goal. Danforth got away with a stick infraction just to call game right after. The same week, McDavid got to 700 apples, making him the third fastest to do so, while we also saw Seth Jones get real honest over in Chicago.
We're the exact same team right now as we were at Game 1.
Sure enough, he would be moved shortly after to Florida for Knight. Around this time, a solid start to the season was unraveling a bit for New Jersey. Since the Christmas break, it had been downhill in the scoring department. Their goaltending and defense were overall solid, but a lack of scoring was their kryptonite, which was compounded with the loss of Jack Hughes that week, which certainly didn't help. Over in Pittsburgh, we saw Boston's Brad Marchand injured following a hit from P.O. Joseph, which subsequently wound up being his last game in a Bruins jersey. The big man in Winnipeg, notching his 36th win during this week, meant he had as many or more than every team in the league aside from 5 teams. Another crazy stat. Meanwhile, we also got our third goalie goal of the season. Stamkos, with no goals through 12 games now, instead scored on himself with the empty net, but with Sorokin being the last to touch the puck on a save, it meant he was credited for the goal. And it was a week of some awesome goals. Cole Caulfield in Montreal with, wow, a pretty one, and then Nathan MacKinnon with some pretty hand-eye against the Devils gave us another beauty. But with the ramp up into playoff hockey and the trade deadline looming, the following week was a real banger. We had trades galore in week 22, sending shockwaves around the league again. There were giant hits again, some heavyweight tilts, and fans even paying off refs that week. In the Shark Tank, after a close call on Lee's goal on Georgiev needed a review, while the officials were taking a look, this fan tried to bribe him, which ironically kind of worked. But also in San Jose, this was the week we saw Will Smith bet Tyler Toffoli that if he, Celebrini, and Toffoli all scored a goal, they would have to have a sleepover. And sure enough, the boys were rolling against Buffalo. All 3 got on the board, and a bet's a bet, a sleepover was had. More than anything though, there were several pretty big deals made that week from contenders beefing up for the postseason, and yet again, the biggest name involved was Rantanen.
When he showed up, he said, "There's 4 teams I'll go play for. Well, you're not one of them."
of them.
They couldn't get a deal done in Carolina to lock him down. Marner didn't want to waive his no-move clause, and so instead he was shipped to Dallas. The second blockbuster deal involving Mikko this season, as his time for the Canes was real short-lived. Another major shocker, though, was Boston trading their captain Brad Marchand to Florida.
How's the luck? I thought it brings up my eyes.
They had a fully assembled Rat Pack in Florida, and it was terrifying. In other big news, Ovechkin, scoring a ridiculous 0.7 goals per game, entered the final countdown this week, with goal 885 putting him just 10 from taking the record, and an empty netter made it 9. But against the Senators, Ullmark, with a beauty of a stop, ensured it wasn't 8. As wow, what a save. But the save of the week, maybe of the year, came from John Gibson, who from behind his back snatched this one from out of the air. That was just beautiful. Having said that, the following week, Ullmark said, all right, hold my beer. Playing his former team, he absolutely robbed Lowry. On the topic of goalies, the Flower that week played his final game against Sid and Gino ever in Minnesota, where poetically, they were the only two to score on him.
Sorry.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, before the game, these guys get switched, man.
That same week, the Rangers scored not one, but 2 shorties on the same PK against Columbus, which was wild. And for Edmonton, Connor McDavid, on an 8-game scoring drought, scored 2 of his prettiest goals all season in the same week. I mean, just look at that McJesus magic. Further that week, Michkov became the first rookie to 20 against the Jets, and no, this is not a mistake. Makar and McKinnon against the Sharks and their former goalie combined for an 11-point night in Colorado, as Mac Daddy was now the first to 100 points. The following week, with an assist on this goal, he secured his 1,000th career point, meaning he was the 100th player to ever do it. The bench cleared. It was a beautiful moment. That was not. That goal was called offside.
Thought about that before the game, that they're going to call it back when everyone came on, so it came true.
No worries though. He picked up a secondary in the third to, for the second time of the night, see his teammates come out and congratulate him again. So as we now get to this next week, some other notables. Aaron Ekblad was suspended for 20 games after violating the NHL's performance-enhancing substances program, which meant with the addition of Jones, which what amazing timing, Ekblad was now going to be perfectly rested for the playoffs. True justice. This was the week we saw Benoit go full Superman on Kesselring before he got tossed and had to reset his own thumb in the box. Certainly another memorable sequence of the season, and yes, it was worthy of another Louvre nod. Over in Seattle, we saw NHL history again, as that was the fastest goal to start an overtime ever at just 4 seconds. How insane is that? The hits this week were also great, with the playoff race again heating up. Some of these hits were out of this world, truly some beauties, but out of their nets this week were the goalies. Stay in your net! Net! Oh, God, no. 3 in 1 week?
Yeah, I got to work on my dangles a little bit. If you're a goalie, tend to go, so to speak.
Yes. We had 3 in 1 week, as we'll get moving on to week 24, where we saw the Big Rig formally announce his retirement would be coming at the end of the season after 14 seasons and 3 Stanley Cups. The same week, more of the rough stuff around the league, which is where we saw Kiefer Sherwood break the NHL single season record for hits, and once again at practice, teammates Pizzetta and Jackeye this time nearly got in a dust-up.
Yeah, I looked up Pizzetta's mustache today. I just wasn't feeling it, so that's we started going at it now. Probably grab dinner tonight. It's all part of the game.
Then after a feisty one over in LA that eventually saw Kemper have a guy in his grill, this was as close as we got this season to a goalie fight. Swayman invited Kemper, he RSVP'd, the gear came off, and the Zebras said no. Why? We were so close, but yet so far away. You may also remember that ridiculous sequence in Toronto where on the PK, Benoit cleared it and Kelly Sutherland dove right into the puck, which eventually led directly to Lorentz picking it up and scoring shorthanded. I mean, the only thing worse was that it was for the game winner. Another insane sequence playing Sabres hockey, they drew a penalty. It was the third period, they had the empty net, but rather than taking the extra men, they sent it straight into their own net, which meant Stenlund, who took the penalty, was the last Utah player to touch it and therefore was also the player credited with the goal. Incredible. Meanwhile, getting some New Jersey hockey, Kovacevic at this time had a few delay of game penalties, and so as a result, he found himself suddenly thrown under the bus by his own coach.
Kovacevic just needs to play better. That would help. Yeah.
We also saw another one of the oddest goals I have ever seen this week, with the Blues getting an in-the-air tic-tac goal. Wow. I mean, how cool was that? And that week, the Sharks also became the first eliminated from playoff contention, and subsequently, Will Smith nearly killed Sharky.
Oh my God.
As for the Capitals, well, they became the first team to clinch a berth, which, speaking of, with goal number 888 against Philly, Ovi now had his 15th 35-goal season, which is good for the most in NHL history, and Crosby, since the Four Nations break, had the most points in the league during that time, as he was on a tear, which meant in week 25, Sid, the gray-haired kid, officially broke a long-standing Gretzky record. Despite getting spanked by Buffalo, Crosby this game secured his 20th point per game season, officially passing Gretzky and becoming the first player in NHL history to ever do it. Meanwhile, Draisaitl, with his 50th against the Flames, became one of two active players with 4 50-goal seasons, and with an OT winner that same game, which was his 6th of the season, that was now a record for the most in a single season in NHL history. In other news, over 14 goals were given up in 2 games by Philly, which saw John Tortorella show us how to lose a job.
I'm not really interested in learning how to coach this type of season where we're at right now.
And so, with 9 games remaining on the season, the Flyers officially relieved Torts of his duty, bringing the end of an era.
I don't know Cutter from a hole in a wall.
Really, it's a young, dumb league.
One thing we do have is balls.
It pisses me off that you guys throw that around.
You're not going to get shit out of me in a 30-minute practice. So let's get going. Did I go at you not answering any of your questions? Well, it's a dumb league. I'm not answering your questions.
What a run. As for some other notable moments that week, we saw Brandon Carlo drop him against Malott. Carlo was leaking, and so Malott looking over, "You good there, bud?" Oh yeah, what a great game hockey is. Kucherov against Tappa went headfirst into Ned's mask that week. He was aching and whoop, is there something missing? He would go back searching. "Hey dude, you see my tooth anywhere?" "Well, taking a look for you, that right there is your missing chiclet." Mikkola at home against the Habs at the end of this game nearly took the head off of Savard, which obviously caused a stir up, and after getting throttled by the Rangers, Celebrini's night only got worse when he found his car had been hit in the parking lot by the Rangers bus. I'm sure you remember this, and while no suspect was ever named, we know who it was. This week, coming back from injury and now in a new sweater, we also got our first glimpse of Marchand in a Cats uniform, and he picked up his first point in Florida, where he celebrated with his first rat. Over in New Jersey, we learned that if you shake a goalie just right, pucks actually fall from their nuts. We also saw Ovi facing Fleury for the final time that week, the guy he had scored more goals on than anyone else in his career, and he made sure at the end of the game to tell his teammates who were well down the tunnel to get back out here, line up, and give the Flower a proper send-off after what was a 20-year rivalry. And lastly, after Hellebuck recorded a career-high 7th shutout against the Devils, with his 43rd dub of the season, he became just the 3rd goalie in 25 years to do it twice. But so, with 43 wins, that would tell you we were near the end of the season, which we were, but not before one of the greatest milestones we have ever seen was officially hit. Ovi, starting this week 4 short of the record, scored goals in back-to-back games, and then had a 2-goal performance against the Blackhawks, meaning he was now officially tied with the Great One. But you may remember, he nearly broke the record that same game. However, instead, he now got the whole world to tune in for an Islanders game. Which, by the way, the Islanders are the same team Gretzky scored his final goal against in '99, and now, 31 years later, facing Sorokin, who was another potential victim he hadn't scored on. We did see him become a victim, as that right there was $8.95. From his office, it was an instant classic. He had 5 goals in 4 games to get here, and what a scene it was. He also did it in game number 1487, which is the same amount of games Wayne finished his career with. Certainly the storyline of the season, as the chase was now officially over. Meanwhile, in stealth mode, the Blues out of nowhere had won not just their 10th against Detroit that week, not just their 11th against the Penguins, but make it 12 straight as they officially broke their franchise record with Monty now at the helm. And speaking of him, his former club, the Bruins, were on a 10-game losing streak during the same time. Ouch. Makar during this time netted his 30th goal as he became the first D-man to 30 in 16 years. And speaking of D-men, Lane Hutson became just the 10th rookie defenseman to 60 points as he was beginning to take the reins for the Calder favorite, and how not with this nasty freaking goal that also came this week. Further, that week also reactivated old-time hockey as we saw a wild one over in Carolina between them and Washington. There were numerous players tossed. Jankowski and Dowd between the benches were hilarious, and it was also the game we saw Chatfield ragdoll McMichael with a throwdown, which, by the way, you remember Stankoven still coming out for the 3rd start? I thought that was pretty great. But this was a time where around the league things were haywire. Hams versus Bees with a long-time rivalry gave us a pissy one. Detroit and Florida went at it, which was where we saw Marchand with this crazy chirp. You're so fat. Dakota Johnson in Vancouver took maybe the coolest looking penalty of the season, and in Dallas we got dueling Hatties, Dadonov first and Crosby. 16 years after he did it with Ovi, got one as well. But with that, it brings us to the 27th and final week of the regular season, which seemed to save some of the best for last. We had brawls breaking out all over the league, bone-crushing hits, more history being made, and just a crazy week overall, as we saw maybe the greatest empty netter of all time. Owen Tippett from his own blue line went barred down for one, while we also saw maybe the goal of the year in the final week. In LA, Byfield grabbing right stick with his left hand, knocked the shot down with his right, and one-handed scored. It was definitely a penalty, but it was still impressive. We also witnessed the end of several NHL careers, though. Maroon and Alec Martinez played their final games in Chicago, while the Flower in Minnesota saw his farewell tour come to an end, even bringing his kids out for the anthem. And while he let in 7, as Celebrini even netted a Hattie against him, they would eventually take it 8-7 in overtime in a game where Eriksson Ek scored nearly every time he touched the puck. You remember this? He got not just a Hattie, but 4 goals, as out of it, the Flower officially became the first ever to record 70 overtime wins. Then Pasta with an apple here hit the century mark for the 3rd straight season, while Nikita Kucherov for the 4th straight season hit 80 assists, becoming just the 4th player to ever accomplish this. I mean, the man had another fantastic year, and despite a ridiculous 26 home game point streak from McKinnon to close out the season, Kucherov caught him and wound up taking the Art Ross for the 2nd straight year, making it his 3rd ever. Meanwhile, Hellebuck would finish the year with 45 wins, recorded his 8th shutout in the final week, and in doing so, became just the 3rd goalie in history with 45 wins and 8 shutouts in a single season. And this week we got to see Gabriel Landeskog, after what was a long road to recovery, for the first time in nearly 3 years play a professional game in the AHL. Lastly, for notables, the Winnipeg Jets, clinching the President's Trophy, were at the top of the league for the first time in their history, as we got to see each division leader officially lock up their spot, while for the first time ever, the Bruins, Rangers, and Penguins all missed the playoffs. As for crazy moments in the final week, we saw Marchand net his first as a Panther.
Sucked. I wasn't happy for him. He's a rat, and I wasn't too happy.
He's a scumbag too.
We saw Derek Forbort break his orbital bone this week after Trenyan caused that. And over in Columbus, this was great. In what was a scrappy game, in the 3rd period, we saw some misconducts handed out. But while not announced by the officials, Voronkov also got one, despite the officials saying he did tell him personally. The problem is he speaks no English. So he said, okay, went to the bench, and 2 shifts later, oh, who's that? There he is out there on the power play, as this was so good. Why? Yep, no, he's not supposed to be out there. Why didn't you tell the coach? Didn't we? He says that we did. Well, we're in there. You don't know where he goes? Fantilli and the boys had me dying this entire exchange, as I can't say I've seen something like this before. Just crazy. And another crazy moment came in Dallas, where Dallas, up 5-2 with a minute to go, couldn't lose this one, right? Well, with 60 seconds to go, it was a 2-goal game. Then with 29 to go, it was now a 1-goal game, and the problem for Dallas was Vancouver needed just 23 seconds as Suter would square things up on a bouncing puck and push this one to overtime, where you better believe it, Vancouver would end up taking it 6-5, becoming the first team in history to accomplish this feat. And over on Long Island, after the Rangers scored their 6th against the Islanders, Hogberg was pulled for Linux, who made his NHL debut, but not 5 minutes later, he got scored on with the first shot against, and he was now pulled as Hogberg was back in.
Might not have been my best decision.
Lastly, Ivan Demidov coming over from the KHL to join the Canadiens for the playoffs could mean just one thing. The Montreal Canadiens made NHL history. Not only did Lane Hutson get to 60 assists to tie an NHL record by a rookie D-man, with an average age of 25.95, the Habs became the youngest team to ever make the playoffs, which were now officially set. And while this video was more so aimed at the regular season, as for the playoffs, they were unhinged. We had the harmonica ladies, a full-out brawl that went to the bench in Montreal. Rantanen went on one of the greatest streaks the league has ever seen. We had the Battle of Ontario, the Battle of Florida, which was truly a bloodbath. We saw a history-making comeback from Winnipeg, a history-making loss from Toronto, impressively bad coaching, that was truly something, and in the end, all roads eventually leading to history repeating itself. Ultimately, the Panthers became back-to-back champs, but again, with a long regular season, this video was more about taking a look back at some of the chaos from the regular season. Now, as for me personally, it was an awesome year. The channel really blew up this year, but it was also a year that came with some major challenges with the NHL and their claims, so that was a bummer, but still. This mega recap video is meant as a thank you from me for everything. I hope you've enjoyed the ride, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart.